So if a cyber attack is, silently spreading through your company's network right now, as you listen to this, how long would it take you to actually notice?
Oh, that is the million-dollar question right there.
Right, like minutes, days. Because for a staggering number of organizations, the answer is usually just, well, whenever the ransom note finally pops up on the screen.
Exactly, and that is way too late.
Way too late. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a sledgehammer to the old illusion of the castle and moat security model. Our mission today is to decode a really critical piece of cybersecurity architecture from our source material. It's known as CIS Critical Security Control 13.
Right, which focuses entirely on network monitoring and defense.
Yeah, and before we jump in, think of a company's network like a massive system of digital highways. Every email, every file transfer, cloud app, security camera, they're all just vehicles on that road.
I love that analogy.
Thanks. But if nobody's watching the highway, attackers and malware can just cruise freely from computer to computer. So, setting the stage here, what are the actual stakes with Control 13?
Well, the stakes are everything. That core question you asked, how long does it take you to notice an attacker?
Yeah.
That's really the pulse of modern cybersecurity. The industry calls it dwell time.
Dwell time. Got it.
Yeah, it's the gap between the exact moment an attacker breaches your system and the moment your security team, finally spots them.
Which used to be a really long time, right?
Oh, historically, dwell time was measured in months. Attackers would literally just camp out. They'd map the network, find the sensitive databases, steal credentials, all completely invisible to the company they were actively robbing.
Wow, just living in the walls.
Basically, yeah. So
Yeah.
Control 13 is fundamentally this huge philosophical shift. It's the industry formally moving away from a mindset of assuming trust and moving entirely to assuming breach.
Which means giving up on the idea that, like, a single giant firewall at the edge of your network is going to save you.
Exactly. You assume they are already inside.
We are assuming the attacker is already past the front door. And that shifts the entire mission. If the perimeter is dead, the new metric for success isn't keeping them out entirely. It's shrinking that dwell time from months down to, like, milliseconds.
Precisely. And to do that, the framework breaks the problem down into maturity phases. They call them implementation groups.
Right. I saw that in the sources.
Yeah, so the very first phase, implementation group 1, is dedicated entirely to baseline visibility. I mean, before you can fight off an attacker, you have to know they are in the building. You have to see the invisible.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the source material emphasizes that step 1 for this visibility is centralizing security event alerting. Taking the data from your firewalls, your endpoints, identity management systems, and just dumping it all into one central dashboard.
That's the core of it, yes.
So wait, I have to push back on this centralized dashboard concept a bit.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't checking 5 different specialized dashboards better? Like, doesn't it force an IT team to be thorough? If an analyst has to actively log into the firewall console and then separately log into the VPN dashboard, aren't they paying closer attention to the nuances of each system? Why put all our diagnostic eggs in one centralized basket?
What's fascinating here is the psychological and really the operational reality of how human beings process data under pressure. Checking 5 disparate systems doesn't make a team more thorough. It actually severely fragments their situational awareness.
Oh, really? It just confuses things.
It creates deadly delays. Let's look at the mechanism of a modern attack. An intruder doesn't usually set off massive flashing red alarms right away. They move laterally, step by step.
Right. They're trying to be quiet.
Exactly. So they might trigger a very subtle, low-level anomaly on the VPN at, say, 2:00 a.m. Then 5 minutes later, they trigger a completely different minor alert on a specific server's endpoint protection.
Which is on a totally different dashboard.
Yes. And then, 10 minutes after that, a strange query hits the domain controller.
And none of which looks like a catastrophe on its own.
Exactly. Individually, they are just background noise. If your security team is isolating those alerts in 5 different dashboards, they will never connect the dots in time.
Because they're looking at puzzle pieces in separate rooms.
Perfectly said. Centralization involves using a system usually called a SIEM, a security information and event management platform, to ingest all those separate logs and correlate them. The system realizes that the VPN login, the server alert, and the domain query are all tied to the exact same user account in a 10-minute window.
Oh, wow. So it stitches a narrative together.
It turns isolated whispers into a coherent threat. Without it, you just won't know you're under attack until the damage is done.
So it's all about context. And to feed that centralized system, the framework demands you deploy intrusion detection solutions, or IDS, and it breaks them down into two distinct layers, host-based and network-based.
Right, this is where we get into the mechanics of how we actually spot malicious behavior. Host-based intrusion detection, or HIDS.
Spelled HIDSS.
Yep, HIDS. It involves software agents deployed directly onto the operating systems of your actual computers, your laptops, desktops, servers.
Like CrowdStrike or Windows Defender, that kind of thing.
Exactly like that. They are looking at the internal mechanics of that specific machine. They monitor the system registry, they look at what processes are running in memory, and they watch for things like privilege escalation.
Privilege escalation being when an attacker gets in as a regular everyday user but tries to hack their way into becoming an administrator.
Exactly that. Or they might watch for a seemingly normal application suddenly doing something highly abnormal. Like if Microsoft Word suddenly opens a hidden command prompt and tries to run an encrypted PowerShell script.
That's a massive red flag. Word shouldn't be doing that.
Right. So the host-based system catches the anomaly happening directly on the device.
Okay, but then you have network-based intrusion detection, or NIDS. If the host-based system is watching the gears inside the engine, I guess the network-based system is watching the roads connecting the cars.
That's a great way to picture it. It monitors the traffic flowing across the network, switches and routers, tools like Snort or Zeek.
But how does that actually work in practice? Like, if a piece of malware is scanning the network, what does the NIDS actually see?
It sees mathematical impossibilities.
Mathematical impossibilities, what do you mean?
Well, when a human being uses a network, they connect to a file server, they open a document, they send an email. The traffic is very sporadic and targeted.
Right, it's slow, human speed.
But when an automated piece of malware infects a machine and tries to spread, it performs what's called a port scan. It will rapidly knock on thousands of digital doors across hundreds of IP addresses in just a fraction of a second, just to see which machines are online and which ports are open.
Okay, yeah, a human could never click that fast.
A human couldn't even come close. So the NADS watches the flow of packets, recognizes that an endpoint just attempted 10,000 sequential connections in 2 seconds, and instantly flags it.
That makes perfect sense. And to back all of this up, the framework insists on collecting network traffic flow logs, which, if the alert is the alarm bell, the flow logs are basically the itemized phone bill.
I like that. They don't record the actual conversation, right? They don't record the payload of the data.
Right, but they record the metadata, exactly who talked to whom, at what time, for how long, and over what port.
And that metadata is the absolute lifeblood of incident response. If you get an alert that a specific laptop was compromised at 3:00 p.m. on a Friday, your very first question is going to be, where else did this laptop go?
Wait, what did it touch?
The flow logs allow you to trace the exact path the attacker took through the network. You can definitively say, okay, after it was compromised, this laptop talked to the HR database, but it never touched the engineering servers. It allows you to scope the breach accurately.
But everything we've talked about so far, the centralization, the host detection, network detection, the logs, that's all just passive.
It is.
It's the smoke alarm. And a smoke alarm doesn't put out the fire for you. It just lets you know your house is burning down.
Which is a terrifying place to stop. And that realization forces the transition from Implementation Group 1 into Implementation Group 2. We shift from passive monitoring into active defense.
We start building the interior walls.
Exactly. The framework calls this traffic filtering between network segments. Instead of a flat network where every computer can talk to every other computer, you carve the network into isolated zones.
So this is like the watertight doors on a submarine. If someone clicks a phishing link in the accounting department and that room starts to flood with ransomware, you seal the digital door so the whole ship doesn't sink. The engineering servers don't go down with accounting.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Segmentation fundamentally breaks an attacker's ability to move laterally. I mean, if accounting has no legitimate business reason to communicate directly with the security cameras in the parking lot, you create a rule at the network level that explicitly denies that traffic.
You just cut the highway off.
Right. You enforce the principle of least privilege at the actual network routing layer.
Okay, but segmenting a physical office building is easy. We have to talk about where people are actually working these days. What happens when your network is actually 50 employees sitting in 50 different coffee shops across the country?
Yes, the remote worker problem.
Yeah. How do we put watertight doors on public Wi-Fi? The framework highlights managing access for remote assets, and honestly, this seems like the hardest part of the entire puzzle.
It is arguably the greatest architectural challenge IT teams face today. The traditional VPN, the virtual private network, used to be the answer. You'd create an encrypted tunnel from the coffee shop back to the corporate office, and once the user logged in, they were treated as if they were sitting right at their desk.
But that completely violates our new philosophy of assume breach.
Yes, it does, because if an attacker steals a VPN password, they get the keys to the entire kingdom. They are on the inside.
So how do you fix it? How do you protect remote workers now?
You move toward architectures like zero trust network access. In a zero trust model, you don't just authenticate the user's password once and grant broad network access. You constantly authenticate both the user and the posture of their device.
The posture, like the health of the laptop.
Exactly. The system checks. Is this laptop running the latest operating system? Is the antivirus turned on? Is it connecting from a recognized location? And even if all of that passes, the system doesn't put the user on the general network.
It doesn't. Where do they go?
It creates a microsegment. It builds a temporary encrypted bridge exclusively between that specific remote user and the single application they requested and absolutely nothing else.
Oh, wow. So even if the remote laptop is compromised, the blast radius is contained to that one single app. The attacker can't pivot anywhere else on the network.
Exactly. That is incredibly powerful for limiting attacker movement.
It really is. But the framework takes active defense even further. We talked about intrusion detection earlier, but Group 2 introduces host and network intrusion prevention solutions, or IPS.
The evolution from merely detecting bad behavior to automatically blocking it.
Right. So an intrusion prevention system doesn't just watch the port scan happen. It automatically blocks the IP address. It actively kills the malicious process in memory or stops ransomware encryption dead in its tracks.
Without waiting for a human analyst to approve the action.
But wait, I see a massive risk here. If an intrusion prevention system is automatically killing processes and severing connections based on what it thinks is suspicious, aren't we risking blocking legitimate employees from doing their actual work? Like, what if the system gets a false positive and shuts down the CFO's laptop right in the middle of a quarterly earnings call?
That is a very valid concern, and it's the exact reason IPS is classified as a mature, advanced step, mostly IG2 and IG3 compared to just detection. The risk of self-inflicted downtime is substantial.
So you can't just plug it in and turn it on?
You cannot simply pull an intrusion prevention system out of the box, turn the auto-kill dial to maximum, and walk away. If you do, you will bring your business operations to a grinding halt.
So it requires like a calibration phase.
A very intensive one. Usually, you run these prevention systems in monitoring mode for weeks or even months. You watch what they would have blocked, and you tune the rules. You teach the system the difference between ransomware aggressively encrypting the hard drive and a database administrator just running a legitimate, heavy script to back up files.
That makes sense.
But despite the risk, automated prevention is mandatory today. Human reflexes are simply too slow to stop modern ransomware, which can encrypt an entire server farm in minutes. You have to rely on machine speed defense.
Which perfectly bridges us to the truly advanced configurations implementation group 3. Having set up the cameras and built the automated walls, we move to the advanced guard. This is where organizations meticulously fine-tune their perimeter, starting with who is even allowed to touch the network cables.
Right, physical access.
Yeah, the framework points to port-level access control, specifically technologies like 802.1x.
This is a fascinating mechanism.
Yeah.
It operates at layer 2, the physical and data link layer. Imagine an attacker walking into your corporate lobby, finding an empty conference room, and plugging their personal rogue laptop directly into an Ethernet jack on a wall.
In a traditional network, the switch would just say, hello, new device, handed an IP address, and the attacker would be on the network.
Exactly. But with 802.1x...
Yeah, what happens then?
With 802.1x, the physical port on the switch is locked down by default. When a device plugs in, the switch demands a cryptographic certificate or credentials before it allows a single packet of standard network traffic to pass.
It acts like a bouncer.
Yes. It initiates a handshake with an authentication server. If the unknown laptop doesn't have the corporate certificate proving it belongs to the company, the switch port refuses to open. The attacker gets absolutely nothing.
Wait, if network access control completely blocks a port until it verifies a digital certificate, what happens to dumb devices, like an older security camera or a lobby printer or a smart thermostat? They don't have operating systems that can manage cryptographic certificates. If you turn on strict 802.1x, aren't you just breaking half the hardware in the office?
That is the classic trap of network engineering. Yes, if you apply blanket 802.1x, Every printer and IoT device in the building drops offline instantly.
So how do you get around that?
To solve this, network defenders use a workaround called MS Authentication Bypass, or device profiling.
How does that work?
Every network card has a unique physical identifier called an MSC address. The network access controller can be configured to profile the device based on its behavior and that MSC address. It says, okay, I don't see a certificate, but this device is behaving exactly like a Hewlett-Packard printer, and its MSC address belongs to HP. So instead of blocking it completely, it dynamically drops that port into an isolated, restricted VLAN, a virtual LAN that only allows printer traffic. It gives the dumb device just enough access to function, but traps it in a highly restricted segment.
Oh, that's clever. So you don't break the business, but you don't leave the door wide open either. That level of granular control is impressive. But the framework goes even deeper with application layer filtering. And here's where it gets really interesting. In the past, firewalls just looked at ports, like port 80 for web, port 443 for encrypted web, port 25 for email.
That was the old bouncer at the club. The bouncer just checked to see if you had a ticket. If you had a ticket for port 443, you got in.
But attackers figured that out, right? They realized that businesses absolutely have to leave port 443 open, otherwise employees literally can't use the modern internet. So attackers just started hiding all their malicious traffic, their malware downloads, command and control beacons inside standard web traffic.
Right. To understand application layer filtering, think of network traffic like a set of Russian nesting dolls. The port number is just the outermost doll. The firewall looks at it, sees port 443, and thinks it's a normal web request.
But the attacker has hidden the malicious payload in the innermost doll?
Exactly. So application layer filtering forces the defense system to actually open every single doll before letting it pass.
It's performing deep packet inspection, looking beyond just the ports.
Precisely. It goes beyond the headers to inspect the actual application traffic. And because most web traffic is encrypted now, this often requires SSL decryption. The firewall actually acts as a secure middleman. It decrypts the HTTPS traffic, inspects the actual application layer payload, the innermost doll, to see if it contains a malicious script or, say, an unauthorized file transfer, and then re-encrypts it before sending it on to the user.
Wow.
Yeah. It can detect if someone is using port 443 to access a sanctioned corporate Salesforce account, or if they are using that exact same port to quietly upload proprietary source code to a personal Dropbox account.
That is an incredibly deep level of visibility, controlling SaaS apps, inspecting HTTPS. But it brings us to a massive, looming problem, which is the final piece of the framework: tuning security event alerting thresholds. Because if you have host detection, network detection, application filtering, and identity tracking, you are generating a tidal wave of data. You are generating thousands of alerts a day.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the human element of cybersecurity completely fractures. The danger of alert fatigue is one of the most critical vulnerabilities in any organization.
Alert fatigue?
Yes. If a security analyst sits down for an 8-hour shift and their dashboard is flooded with 10,000 low-priority alerts, an employee mistyping a password, a legitimate script acting slightly weird, a marketing manager downloading a large file, their cognitive bandwidth is just destroyed.
This is exactly like tuning a sensitive car alarm. If a car alarm goes off every time a heavy truck drives by, everyone in the neighborhood subconsciously learns to just ignore it. You only want it screaming when someone actually smashes a window with a crowbar.
Exactly. When the Target data breach happened years ago, one of the real tragedies was that their advanced security systems actually detected the malware. They generated alerts.
Wait, really? The system saw it?
The system saw it, but the alerts were buried in a mountain of noise, and the security team missed them. So tuning thresholds is a structural necessity to prevent those catastrophic misses.
Right.
It ensures your security teams don't lose their minds.
So how do you tune it mechanically? The source material gives a great example about passwords, right? Instead of having the system flash a red alert on every single failed login, because, humans are terrible at typing and we all forget our passwords, you tune the system to only alert when, say, 25 failed logins happen in 5 minutes on the same account.
Yes, you rely on behavioral thresholds rather than binary events. Another great mechanism is detecting impossible travel.
Impossible travel? What's that?
Well, instead of alerting every time an employee logs in remotely, the system calculates the physics of the logins. If an employee logs in successfully from an IP address in New York, and then 14 minutes later logs in successfully from an IP address in Eastern Europe, the system flags it.
Because it is physically impossible to travel that distance in that time.
Right, which means the session token was stolen or the VPN credentials are compromised.
It's looking for the context that proves malicious intent. And that tuning ensures the security analysts are focusing their limited time and energy on verified, high-fidelity threats.
Exactly.
So bringing all of this together, we've traced the entire evolution of CIS Control 13 today. We started with installing the cameras and centralizing the logs in Implementation Group 1. We built the watertight submarine doors, zero-trust bridges, and automated kill switches in Group 2. And then we moved to the Advanced Guard, locking down physical ports, cracking open the Russian nesting dolls of encrypted traffic, and surgically tuning the alarms in Group 3. To summarize the overarching theme for you listening, Control 13 is fundamentally about knowing what's happening on your network and taking control of it. Detection spots the fire, defense stops the spread.
And this framework is what ultimately gives executives, and really any business owner or IT professional, the confidence to operate in a dangerous digital world. You need the mathematical assurance that a single compromised remote laptop in a coffee shop won't take down your entire enterprise.
It really is about peace of mind.
It is, and it's worth noting how beautifully this complements CIS Control 8, which focuses on audit logs. Control 8 is the historical record. It's the black box you use after a plane crash to figure out historically why the engines failed. But Control 13 is the cockpit alarm system and the automated stabilizers keeping the plane in the air. It's about stopping the bleed in real time.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive talking about the death of the castle and moat and moving to an assume breach mentality. But think about the trajectory of how we work. With massive cloud migrations, remote workforces, and third-party APIs tying businesses together, how does the very definition of a network change in the next 5 years?
It's a great question.
Right. When the digital highway isn't just confined to a corporate office, but is literally everywhere woven through the homes, phones, and coffee shops of thousands of employees around the world, how will you decide where to put your toll booths and security cameras tomorrow?
The perimeter isn't a place anymore, it's an identity. And defending that invisible perimeter is the next great frontier.
A massive challenge, but as we've seen today, the tools to build that defense absolutely exist. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of CIS Control 13. Keep your cameras rolling, trust nothing without verification, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.